Alrighty, we're back.
I get some water.
We're back here again with Tim Beck, the Godfather, talking and we're rocking it through the history of cannabis reform in Michigan. Is Fermina? Shut up?
Yeah.
Great. We left off the campaign against was really ineffective. The voting for the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was more than any other vote ever in the history of Michigan voting. It passed overwhelmingly, majority in every single county, all 82 of them, and bam, it passed. And Tim has described himself, he was a kind of an exile, and MPP did not stick around, and there was, explain what was going on there, like how you know, because you know, for people that understand, the law passed overwhelming, now what?
Yeah.
Where do you go, what do you do? What happens, Tim? To explain how that thing played out.
What happened is that there was a panic within the state bureaucracy and within the state government is how do we handle this and what do we do? You know, the rules that we laid out apparently to them weren't plain enough. They weren't specific enough, or they didn't get it, or it needed clarification. And they came up with a laundry list. You know, it was an administrative agency, the Department of Health, actually. I believe that's what it was. They had stuff. Well, I remember one specific rule was that to deal with overages. If you're a caregiver or a patient or whatever, if you went over, you had to turn the marijuana. You had to surrender it to the state police.
That's feasible. So let's talk about this, because this is an important part of this whole history here, because you got to imagine the law passes, there's like a bureaucratic nightmare. They don't know what to do. Their only stab at getting some control over this is through the administrative rulemaking. And it's the board. What is it? The Department of Community Health. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
As opposed to Lara, which ultimately
right.
took over. But they were the ones that were in charge. That's no longer a department in Michigan, and they were writing administrative rules which allowed the citizens to come and comment on it. They were making ridiculous rules. Some of these, the state police had influenced much of that. And there were some important moments, as we were discussing a little bit before, of people that kind of showed up and really made an impact and set the tone for some of the activism for medical marijuana. Explain some of that stuff.
Well, I would say Greg Francisco was a true hero, a true thinker ahead, and you know he knew, everybody kind of knew that this hearing, this one and only hearing, was going to come up, and the Bureau said it like pretty early in January, so people didn't get a lot of time, you know. But Greg anticipated that coming up. And he got people together. They prepared for it. I think he even had buses or something that went up there. But and I was not involved in it in any way. This was Greg's project, and he did it. He did it very well. And they had people that, I mean, they refuted, you know, these administrative whatever agents, and then an MPP, to their credit, brought in Karen O'Keefe, their top, you know, legal specialist, and the one that had the most to do with actually writing the law. It was her, and so she came in and she gave blown out testimony. I mean, really good testimony. And then there was other people like Greg and some others that got up, just regular folks. I mean, and they came up with real practical problems with this. And these bureaucrats, I mean, they were in over their head. They realized that the vehemence, the anger, they obviously didn't know what they were doing, the state police. And they said, well, no, we don't want the excess marijuana. No, we're not interested in that, and among other things. And then there was a lack of rules, in essence. Nobody wanted to, and things started to evolve. And you had people, well, starting dispensaries, and they're doing all kinds of things to fill in the gaps when there's no legislation or so-called rules.
And you may even be talking about, we're talking about the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, even before the department had, which April was when it really was enacted, and there wasn't even a department. They did have the administrative rule that until the department, your recommendation could serve, if they made it, you know, whatever.
Well, and none of these people even worked on it because they didn't know, they thought it was going to fail. They didn't think it was going to pass, so what do we have to spend our time on this stuff? Well. Yeah. And then they came up with it in a panic with this goofball stuff, because the law went into effect
April 2009.
Yeah, well, yes, that's right, that's correct, yes.
After the
and they had the hearing.
That's what was it? It was,
The cards started in April.
the department started issuing cards in April. You couldn't get a card until then.
Right.
Even though
Correct.
after 2008, a doctor could sign a
The law was
recommendation,
effective December 2000.
a recommendation, and if you
Yeah.
to be defendable, I guess Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know Bob Woodward is the first issue. I mean, remember, but so all right. So that's and you're talking.
But Greg, I mean, he, like I say, I have to give him the man credit. I mean, he really stepped up. He was a primary catalyst, and then he took the movement further. I mean, he had a number of kind of extravaganza, kind of things and stuff where it's right out there, and so, again, it helped, things evolve, and then of course then there's the McQueen case, and no dispensaries, or at least it was clouded at that point, but in between there was this back and forth that went on.
Yeah, there is an interesting time in that regard, and I think, Greg had the foresight. I know, I was not. I don't know. I know, and had heard his testimony at the administrative rules, and I like the way that you described the.
Well, his greatest thing was that his accomplishment was that handling that hearing. That was crucial. That was very, 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 very critical.
Yeah.
That's his greatest accomplishment, in my opinion.
And he kind of set the tone for being, like as a kind of a position as a leader. And, one of the things that maybe even it had more of an impact because you were in exile, was that there was a vacuum of a platform for medical marijuana. I mean, Normal was about legalization. There wasn't anything like really specific for patients, and I think Greg saw that, and I think he. Detroit, they did a couple big events right out of the gate that kind of brought the community together, and he kind of set the tone for that. And I think he was even, the MMA as the organization, which we've involved with now, it's much different than, and a lot has gone on since then. And I think you mentioned the point that since McQueen and the dispensaries, and I think that's really what changed all this. I mean, there could be an internal debate within the community, there could be an external debate with the law enforcement and legislatures about the interpretation from within. What does it really mean? Is it a caregiver system where it's a limited supply? Does it allow for sales? Is there what does compensation for costs mean as it's written?
Well, it was done deliberately that way. Basically, now they would not admit that. Some people would not admit that, but that really was the agenda.
I agree. I've described it as it gets criticized as a poorly written law because it's an initiative, and I say, well, in order for it to become a law, every legislature got a chance to vote on it, because it has to before it becomes law, they have to at least approve that the as written reflects the ballot initiative. They have a legal authority to do that as they have passed. And they did that, and someone within their own legislative body for law writing proposed the law, came up with it. It may have been so they all, and it was all voted on. And so it's crazy when they say poorly written after the fact, because they all had a say, even though it's they may have written otherwise. But as we go into it, it was I always say it was written intended to be broadly written and broadly interpreted to cover a vast majority of different types of scenarios that obviously couldn't be specifically articulated, and unfortunately. All right, so what happened? So let's see. We have let's see from the
Well,
organ.
it was written to basically to deal with the federal government. Back then, that was a primary thing with this caregiver thing. Have the plants scattered, thousands of people growing. The DEA can't handle it.
Right.
That was the whole point. It was more federally oriented.
And to that point, what Tim's making, just expand a little bit. At the time, we did not know who the president was going to be. Obama won that year. He did take a platform that wasn't that outspoken about, medical or anything. We didn't know. We thought he'd be better than Bush. Bush was still going into California to raid those places, which is why the model of caregivers spread the plants, let them be grown all over the state instead of a centralized dispensary or centralized grow that could be easily taken up by the feds. That was the model, and there you have the most unique of any of the programs created by the MPP of 72 plants, caregiver system, and no dispensaries. Now, with that being said, there was a lot of knowledge that needed to be passed around. The MMA attempted to serve that purpose by the creation of the compassion clubs and trying to have a like kind of statewide resource where people could learn about it in more of a Tupperware local community kind of, meet and greet. But then, of course, I don't know, maybe it's just because we're not in Russia and it's the United States. People wanted to turn into a business. We're not doing anything wrong. Where law means this, and and I'm not, and I think it's kind of foolish to think that even the police argument that you're not allowed to make money even under the MMA is absurd. Like that's. I'm not saying, like they do like a profit. There's scenarios that someone could be completely doing it for medical purposes and still earn money. I mean, it's just contrary to logic. But the dispensary thing was about the money, the shutdown of the money. The state wanted to take control of that. The cases, McQueen, as you mentioned, I think is hard to. They didn't really work hard to get to that conclusion with this asymmetrical protection and whatnot. But it foreshadowed, and they even reference in there, maybe it's for the legislature to act here instead. But here, before we even get to the whole dispensary, let's back it up a little bit because, we had different leadership that effectuated this. I think, when Mike Cox was originally the Attorney General, 2008, 2009 through 10, and then Schuette won. I think everyone would have agreed that as much criticism as Mike Cox probably had, we'd have taken him for another 8 years instead of Bill Schuette anytime, But then Schuette comes in and he, and we've talked about this, Tim, I feel like, you need a stacked Michigan, legislature, you had the, Attorney General, there's like very little line political party, there's not a lot of like pro-police, not a lot of pro-cannabis representation within the community at the time, and there's a lot of bills that were introduced 2010, 2011 that were intended to derail the MMA. Yeah. And they went all out. And there was like protests in the Capitol, and they were trying to, it was really, and they were all introduced by Bill Schuette. I remember him standing in the, with the law enforcement community. I think the Dow had dropped like thousands of points that day, and he was consumed with 24 bills he introduced to try to amend the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which is insane. His total bias as the paid gun posing it now was rearing its ugliness in the Attorney General. Yeah. Let's try to remember some of those people that were involved in it. I mean, CPU comes to mind. They were very active in that. But you have like the Walsh bills. I remember like Horn was on that Judiciary Committee. You had...
well, one of the first was Rick Jones, and he did this marijuana bar thing. It was some convoluted sort of thing. Well, what is it? Define it, because he had some terrible experience or whatever. He investigated some guy that they were on motorcycles and they were supposed to be medical patients, and he did all this horrible, this is a joke, and, and so he kind of, that got his attention. So he was the first agitator, when it came to that whole thing, and that's why a lot of people don't like the guy, and but he that brought him out, and then finally there was this cry for this Walsh bills, but again, see, the angle was being worked with Mike Calton. Was a critical player, back then, because he was the first legislator to come out of the closet and just say, yeah, okay, I'll take your money.
You can talk about my scenario.
Sorry for that. Show us interrupt us.
A roll of tape.
A roll of tape and an explosion, apparently.
Holy moly. Paul Williams was right.
Oh boy.
All right, so we were talking about this point in time with the Schuette bills and the implementation. I remember a specific time in this history when the Cole memos began to come out. The Obama started to say when they were not going to, and that really I thought was the difference. I think there was a certain point in time, there was always this fear of the federal government. It was 2010, the first one came out of Obama position, and then that kind of set up the explosion of the dispensaries, and you had that Green Mile in Lansing, we had like hundreds of them, and then Schuette was just appalled by it. There's people were advertising on the radio. It just became a little bit out of control. So the bills started getting implemented, and then we had the real war, and then the McQueen case came down. But what would you say, like pulling back? I mean, I know you keep track and kind of you give an opinion on some of the cases that they've played out. If you were to give a grade to the various offices of public officials that had some influences on that. We started with the Attorney General, let's say Bill Schuette. That's an easy one. If you're giving him a grade of how would you say his role in first of all, how
Yeah.
important do you think that role is in considering that? What grade would you give him?
I would say a D. Simply
That high,
because,
huh?
Yeah, that's pretty generous.
you know, simply because he, you know, he wanted to be governor. And that gave him visibility. It gave him credibility with persons in the party that hate marijuana. That was part of the deal with the whole thing. He's basically, as I can see from a distance, it's totally a political creature. That's really as best as I could define it. And so where the Walsh bills came up, is somebody finally said, we're desperate. What is the Attorney General? Please just tell us what to do. We're here. We want to know. Well, anyway, so a series was bills. Bill Schuette can't introduce a bill. It has to be some other legislator. And it turned out it was this John Walsh and some others. And these were really harsh. I mean, draconian, kinds of stuff. And so there's some other people that there's this Cannabis Patients United CPU was founded. Dave Brogren was a key player. Jamie Lowell, was involved in the group. Ryan Basor, myself for a time, and Craig Canterbury. But these were really intellectual giants. And there was another guy. Oh God, this is terrible. He was an attorney that was all Tim Knowlton. They took on the whole work of all going to all the hearings and negotiating behind closed doors or whatever with the other side, and it went on for a long time. And finally, there was what was produced, the Walsh bills, but it didn't happen overnight. And it was really CPU that was, on our side, that was most responsible for that.
It neutralized them a lot.
Yes,
really
yes, it
neutralized
did,
them.
and it could have been a lot worse. I mean, some people didn't support it. I thought it was a good idea. If what you want is the legislature weighing in and at least owing something, that okay, here's your creation. There you go.
Right.
So now they're bought into it.
Right. The argument, Tim, just to carry on with it, would be they did not repeal the caregiver system, and by not doing that, they have given its blessing. Right.
Yeah.
In other words, they the way the marijuana is going to be grown is still remain. They didn't repeal that, create a new way. The way it's being sold didn't change that. What they did is they messed with the bona fide doctor-patient relationship. They came up with an outdoor grow definition. There was they removed that 7B, 7A from the Section 8, so they tried to make the more expansive defense for Section 8.
Well, and there's that other goofball thing about transportation. That they had to throw in.
That was the second. No, I agree. That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous. It's not even in the Medical Marijuana Act. It's in the penal code, right? And But anyways, so I think, and we've talked about this. I think that Schuette went at this in a very, very inappropriate way. He was the Attorney General, trying to introduce legislation, and I think like a lot of it got shut down. I don't want to, the CPU had a huge impact in terms of neutralizing what was, but all in all, they did not. It was not nearly as bad as it could have been.
The other thing, they had to get that 3/4 supermajority. That was the firewall, really. That otherwise, if we didn't have that 3/4, we probably would have been much harsher.
But wasn't that done with a voice vote? I mean, they didn't actually have the 3/4 in reality.
No, they went on record.
Yeah, they did.
It was
They were talking
we were there. I mean, we were scared. We didn't know
Right.
what was going to happen.
Let's talk about it, because there was the 2012. That's what we're talking about. Amendments from 2012, which they it came out in April 2013, I believe. And then there's a new amendments that came out like in 15, and then the final amendments of 2016, which was retroactive, that went backwards, in terms of change something.
Yeah.
So
well, then the drama about that whole vote, if you remember, we went to bed thinking the bills weren't going to make it through, and at the last minute, Virgil Smith, worked a deal with Jones, and bam, they passed it like around 4 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
At 4 a.m. in the morning.
In the
We
lame
woke
duck.
up, yes, in lame duck.
Yep.
In lame duck.
Woke up to the news.
And we woke up, there it was.
And we've learned that there is no politicking that goes on until lame duck. That these are a bunch of scaredy
But
cat
that knife,
legislators.
That knife cuts both ways.
Right, because then
So
the next
much,
session, there's the promise that the original bills of the dispensary were going to get voted on. Right, everyone had played. Remember that whole thing in 2000? What was it? 14. 14. It went to 2016, and finally,
First
you know.
they killed the dispensary bill, and then they killed 5104, which was the first.
NPRA and all their efforts and
it was all due to reportedly just law enforcement.
Well, Mike Bouchard was the mastermind. He is considered the mastermind of that. He's actually, I met him a couple times. I had even had a group lunch, with the man, and yeah, he's crafty. Let's put it that way, and he knows how to, get things done. And so he decided, and he called up all these cops, and because he was headed at some sheriff's association, National Sheriff's Association at one time. He's that powerful. So he called up these police chiefs to spread the word, and each police chief called up. Out in Oakland County? Are you kidding? Out up north? No. So that's what happened.
all right, moving around the board, we've got the two, between the 2008 and up to now, we get the legislature and different players. Anyone stand out as a, didn't forget, positive, negative, but just was an important player. Someone that was good champion for it, or good champion against it. Obviously, I know you defer to Rick Jones. He's a major player, and I know you give a lot of respect for him, and probably think he's come around a lot. I think you probably think on this issue.
Well,
From an old warrior, top warrior.
Yeah. No, the thing with Jones, I like Jones. He is the opposite of Bill Schuette. Jones is gregarious. Jones is real.
Yeah.
He tells jokes, and he really believes his jokes. and genuine, very, very genuine individual. And for some, he's horrible to work with. Others, if you like that style, which I find I like it, and so we kind of have a
All right, but here's the thing, because he's evolved on this issue, unlike
He
Schuette.
has, yes. Oh, yeah.
He's more akin to what the public wants than it's like a political, elite, kind of like philosophical, just never bending, like an abortion, like the abortion group. You know what I mean? Like it's
sure.
You're never gonna come around.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, no, but
he was mindful. I'm not even. He maybe I don't know how he feels about abortion. I'm just saying, like on this issue, he realized that it's a majority. He's got to come around. He's gonna, it's gonna be.
But they had to do something. They had to pass the law, and this was always my theory, and I got criticized about that. It should have been more time. No, it's better to get it going, and then the system can work itself out, and get more refined to prepare it for legalization. So
Do you think they're thinking that as well? Like Jones. So Jones would be one of the major players that you'd put it at. Do you think his decisions are motivated by not, by these legal, these whatever we pass?
Yeah, he's not a lawyer. He's not a lawyer. He's a former county sheriff. I mean, the man ran the county jail, and he's also a pretty devout Christian, but he doesn't wear it on his sleeve. You never really, unless you really knew the guy, you wouldn't have any idea. And a high, sense of ethics in his own way, and he does try, and he is open, actually. That's the thing. He will be open-minded enough, kind of like a curiosity that a cop would have about something or other. I mean, I'm sorry, that's not, but he does have that curiosity about life. Oh, really? Tell me more. And that's what he'll do, and then he'll come to some conclusion eventually, and so this is why, and it was a good strategy. I think it was a strategy on his part when he started taking on marijuana right away with that biker, that bar thing. Originally, it started some kind of panic, but he put himself out there, and then Meekoff appointed him and told him that every marijuana-related thing goes through his committee, which is judiciary, and he held judiciary from day one. And that's how he got the power that he had, over it. And
he believed so much in the legislation that he got it discharged from his own committee. I mean, he has a lot of flaws, just like anybody else does. But my interactions with him were generally positive when I was in the legislature, trying to advocate for those bills, and he has evolved greatly. I don't think he's right where we want him just yet, but we'll keep trying to push him.
Yeah. Well, my sense is he's not going to be carrying a flag
Right.
to fight this.
Yeah.
Okay. And he has no ego about it, and he's kind of looking for, he's going to have to find something else to do. He's term limited out, next January. So I read somewhere, right, he's thinking of running for county sheriff again, get his old position back from this guy that's sort of been fucking it up or whatever.
Well, I think there's some important times, I think, in the history of all this where, I don't know quite what it was, but I almost feel like it could have gone the other way. I don't know if it was the Supreme Court. Yeah, so let's talk about the Supreme Court or the court system in Michigan as far as, like if we wait, we didn't finish. Is there anyone else that stands out in your mind from a legislative standpoint that's worthwhile giving a grade to and or why? Stands out over the last 8 years, I guess.
Well, that's, Carlton, I mentioned Carlton, and John
That's
Walsh.
true.
John Walsh was another one. This man was head of judiciary, and I met with him, actually. And we hit it off. This guy's a very, very smart, thoughtful man, a banker with a law degree.
Right.
And that man's sharp, and he knew who was in charge,
Right.
and in a gentle way. And so he listened politely. I said, Tim, I thank you so much. I never thought of some of this. Really appreciate it. We'll keep that in mind. And then I met him a couple other times, and it was a good encounter.
Yeah.
We liked each other. And then the next conversation, we were in the restroom, and we got to talking about about the bills, in general. Is there real chance, John? Come on, tell me. How would you peg it? That was the conversation. He said, I think we're going to get it done. There's still a few problems, as you probably know, Tim. I know you know already. So, but I think so. But he came across, like I said, again, genuine, thoughtful, and so he did a lot of shepherding, the thing too.
What about the Supreme Court? I know they've. Do you feel like they've? What grade would you give them in terms of their, as being the final arbiter of the interpretation of the law in Michigan?
I would say a B minus. B minus. I mean, they've made some great decisions, and see, the thing is that appellate court, is really messed up.
Yeah, they are.
It's really, really
Okay,
bad.
you can say that again.
And good Lord,
Say it
thank
again.
God for having those folks, that are
Yeah.
in charge. I mean, really bad stuff. And opus and partisanship. Remember that what's that character? He's some O'Connell or something
O'Connell.
like that.
Dean O'Connell.
Oh man, I remember that character.
Henry Sudd.
Jesus.
Henry Sudd also said.
Yeah.
Jane Markey.
Yeah. Well, that was a different case. No, they were all right. You're thinking of the safer Detroit versus Detroit election. That was a precedent, and it's a published case. That's my case. But
I was thinking of Rocafort and Jane Markey saying that usable marijuana is the dried leaves and flowers, and because it doesn't say dried flowers,
Yeah,
wet
well.
flowers, especially harvested, are also
Yeah.
usable. That was her logic in her most recent opinion from January 2nd of this year.
Well, she's not all there. Actually, she almost lost her election because she made some anti-Semitic comment. And she, one time, people recalled it at a party, and she said it in front of a number of people about trying to Jew them down. They tried to Jew me down, that kind of thing. Well, I'm not going to get Jewed down. She used it like that, and people remember, whoa, wait a minute, oh yes. And they brought that out in order to get her defeated, but it didn't work, unfortunately. But that was part of her history. She's not a real bright bulb, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree that someone that says that publicly is not. I don't know. I'm not going to be a defender, but they're usually not. It's just stupid things. Like they don't realize that they what they're saying. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a. They don't realize because they just heard it so much and they're whatever. They're like,
But the Supreme Court has been fine. I mean, really overturning a lot of that goofball stuff.
And
a lot of it's been pretty good. McQueen, well,
Yeah.
we're hoping for better. But
they really have. I gotta say, if there was ever, they could have been better. They could have expanded Section 4 a little bit. They could have said a husband and wife can grow in the same room, right? But they did for all purposes kind of, retain at least Section 8 defense, somebody like that. And they unanimously, a lot of times, came together and just reversed some terrible, terrible opinions, not even, and stuff that was so off the wall and so.
Well, the thing that I remember, the most memorable instances of that is that one about drug driving. Was it Kolonik or something? Kuhn. There you go.
Drunk driving?
Yes. This was so beautiful. They didn't even have hearings, and they're the Supreme Court. They don't have to have a hearing.
Right.
They can do anything they want.
Yeah.
And they said, they didn't even have a hearing. They just issued a ruling that was over and out.
And that's an interesting. That's going to be a topic of the future. Do we need we were talking about this last week, the per se number or not? What evidence are we going by? The Attorney General. This is going to be discussion amongst them. Police officers are going to want to know, hey, what are we going to do about legalized marijuana? People are going to go to bars. These private things are going to be driving. What's the safe thing? The streets, the children, blah 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 blah.
Children.
And that case is an important case because if you ask the question, what are we doing with patients? Because patients are allowed to have it in their system. Stop. Wait 1 second. And unlike regular citizens who can't have any of it in their system, zero tolerance. You've got this disparity. So if it's so dangerous, number one, when Kuhn said that patients are allowed to have it in their system as long as they're not impaired, you would have thought that there would have been accidents all over the place. We could tie all those deaths and disaster back to these patients. Did not happen.
No, total hocus pocus.
Total hocus pocus. Further, there is, AAA did that study that, they can't come up with a per se number. But most importantly is that the state of Michigan, while they have a law on the books that says zero tolerance is punishable like a drunk driving .15, they're using the same citizens that they would punish for that to do a guinea pig experiment to figure out if there is a per se number they can come up with, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have one for marijuana.
Well, they don't
They'll
have the.
find one, I assure you.
I think Jim was right.
Well, they don't have one for any of these other narcotics either that are on the controlled substance list, right?
Right.
No, but we do have the impaired
Well,
driving
no,
safety
wait. Well,
commission.
theoretically, anything.
That's
that
what I'm
can
saying. That's what we're talking
you know,
about.
Right. And we have
Traced
a
down,
case
but
today.
this was based upon, that proxy THC, the time that don't get you high, or that's
Carboxy, right,
there
there's
you go,
what's that,
carboxy.
What is it,
You're thinking Fiesel.
Fiesel.
Yeah, Fiesel, that's,
Stare decisis case where they decreed that
yeah.
it's not a
Yeah.
psychoactive
And
substance.
that was a big win. for
Huge.
us. That was huge, that was big.
And they talked about the MMA at that time, that case.
Mm-hmm.
We had a new case come out today dealing with this driving issue. And in this case, the person was charged with the drug driving or with any amount in their system, but they were claiming a medical use or being able to use medical marijuana. Should entitle them to the Protection of the Medical Marijuana Act, that they should have to prove, instead of zero tolerance, that they should have to prove for conviction in this case that the person was actually operating the motor vehicle under the influence of THC. And this is a for publication case that came out today from the Michigan Court of Appeals. It's case number 336467, People versus Dana Lynn Cook. So, as I said, she was actually, unfortunately, a third-time drunk driver or drug driver, so she's looking at felony charges. Pretty serious case. So, in order to assert a defense there and to avoid that zero tolerance aspect of our drug driving laws, or what they say, any amount, operating with any amount, the defense attorney asked for a Section 8 hearing and claimed the medical need and claimed that, I can set forth all the elements here to show that, that she did have a bona fide affirmative defense here, and that the prosecution should therefore have to prove that she was operating under the influence instead of the zero tolerance. Well, the court here denied the Section 8 hearing. Outright. Never had the hearing. Now, she was also charged with possession of marijuana, and so this court, the St. Clair Circuit Court, actually said, well, yeah, you can have a Section 8 hearing on the possession, but not on the drug driving. So they took that up here on appeal in this case. It didn't turn out good. I hate to give the very bad news. But actually, they really didn't decide that particular issue, because in the meantime, this particular person had a plea offer where they dropped the possession charge if she pled to the drug driving, and she did that even after this is after she filed her appeal in the Court of Appeals. So she thought that that would reserve her right to appeal it, and she even mentioned that at the appeal hearing, that this application's pending, at the plea hearing.
We know the lawyer on this case. I'm wondering why was it not Section 4? Because if they'd done that under Section 4.
But she didn't have a card to do Section 4.
No card at all?
No, that's fine.
She had a expired card?
No card. I know she did try to do Section 8. I'm pretty sure she didn't have a card. Anyway, the point was she was denied Section 8 here, and she pled guilty and mentioned her application, but they said no, that was an unconditional guilty plea. She thought she was making a conditional plea. So because she pled guilty, she waived her right to challenge Section 8 on appeal. So we don't actually get a decision on this.
All right, back to over here.
But it was
How are we doing? Where are we on our?
It's,
All right.
2 minutes to 10, so it's after closing remarks.
Well, we got. We
Or we can run overtime.
Well, let's take a quick break and come back, and then right. Let's take a quick break and then decide where we're at, and because we can, take a quick break, Jimmy. Throw some music on.
Yeah.
I don't have
10
any.
o'clock.
No, I think we should just wrap it up.
I'm getting a little.
All right, then let's do that. Listen, I don't want to keep it. I thought, yeah, we got more. We're like a
Sounds
third
good.
into it. All right, so let's say our final thoughts. Go around the room. Any other Jimmy? What final thoughts on what went on inside? Let's give a grade to the show. What do you got?
The show gets an A minus.
All right, fine. Why? Fine. Deb,
The minus has to do with Chad and the roll of tape.
where is he? He's not even here.
I'm giving the show an A because Chad is not here,
Okay.
but even if he was here, but I think it should be part 1. There needs to be
Right.
part
Yes,
2,
There you
at
go.
least.
several volumes,
That's right.
Part
Very good.
two.
like you said.
Jeanette, hello, Jeanette. Welcome.
Hi.
Good to see you. You're only here for a
Yeah.
short time, but please.
I'm giving it an A.
All right, very
I
good.
heard our guest speaker was really funny and The Godfather.
There you go.
That's right. All right, Steve. Final thoughts.
Terrific show. I
That's
think, like you said, you're only about a third into it, so
Great.
we want you back, Tim, whenever whenever it's good for you, and let's continue this on. This is
This is
fantastic.
wonderful.
Because the Ross the lawyer coming in right here. Ross the lawyer.
That's nice.
Yeah, Michael, I just want to tell you, talk to Cindy about the olive oil shipments when you get done here, okay?
All right.
Great show.
Okay. All right. So then we'll wrap it up. Any final thoughts, Tim? Before we come back next, we'll have to get you back again. This is too much.
Oh no, I think it was a good show. I would go with it with an A minus again, because of that unnecessary break.
Oh, the
like that.
explosion.
Well, because
Chad.
The ring.
Chad. Chad gets. You see how? You know we've had technical problems. There's like a
Flashbang coming through.
Let's turn it off. All right. As always, we made it to the end. There was only one power blast mistake. We're gonna wrap up episode number 3. So much thanks to the Godfather for being here, and we will
All right.
talk at you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.